There we go. We're live.
Oh, geez. Wonderful, Jez.
I messed
you
up
really know how to host a podcast. Smooth.
Oh man, I got distracted because my TV was flickering for some reason. I was like, oh no, the gameplay won't work. But then I was like, oh, the intro is still playing. But anyway, we made it here. XBOX2+1, powered by Scan Pro Gaming. I completely forgot about that logo.
You never actually ever say that.
Yeah,
you never
I know.
mentioned it once.
Yeah, I know, but we probably should. But
well, you probably should.
Yeah,
not me.
Yeah, I probably should. Because you haven't really benefited from that partnership at all. But here we are, rock and roll XB2+1 live and randomly live. You know, we did say, I think, on the show we were going to gun for an Xbox 2+1, but very last minute, I think. The lovely John Clarke, SIKAMIKANICO, has lovely gentleman has agreed to do XB2+1 at the last minute.
Honor. It's an honor, mate.
It's an honor to have you. You know, do you wanna tell the peeps a little bit about yourself for those who don't know?
I am the guy that caused Microsoft to have a 2013 existential crisis in 2024. What? Is that your right introduction?
Do you put that on your LinkedIn? Is that something that goes there?
I jest. Yeah. I mean, most folks know me from. I presume there's some crossover in audience, right? But if you don't. I am the co-founder and podcast host for Xbox Era, who is a community-funded independent publication focusing on Xbox and PC and some VR gaming when we feel like it. So, yeah.
VR gaming? Wow, that's...
Yeah, occasionally. You know, Meta sent us some quests, so occasionally we dip our toes in. You know,
that's nice.
There's something very good. We'll do it. You know, we like video games fundamentally. So,
have you got the Meta Quest 3, the new one?
I have, yeah. It's really random as well because Jesse got a pack and he got Asgard's Wrath 2, which is a brilliant RPG for VR. And he was like, you should try emailing them. So I literally just dropped Meta an email. I was like, hey, yeah, you know, looking to pick up a Quest 3 for some extra coverage every now and then because, you know, we're looking to do a bit more of it as the year progresses. And I was out on a Saturday. I had the conversation like a Wednesday via email. And they were like, yeah, sure, we'll sort something out. And then I got a postcard through my door from the Royal Mail saying you've missed a package, and they chucked it over my back fence. It's just sitting there in the rain. A brand new Meta Quest 3, just bump. I was like, oh wow, I'm glad this is okay.
Standard Royal Mail for you.
Yeah, but no, it's a ridiculously cool piece of kit. Yeah, it's super niche and it is gimmicky, right? So as soon as if you're a gamer that loves playing video games, unless you're super fit. I don't know about you guys, but I like to sit down. I like to have snacks on hand. I like to be able to see.
Yeah,
it's not for everyone.
Yeah, it's almost like I almost use my Meta Quest just for exercise because it's such an effort for me to do anything with that thing. But anyway, we're not a VR podcast, are we, Rand?
We're an Xbox show.
No, we're transitioning to a UFO podcast and a wrestling podcast. WWE.
True crime, mate. That's where the money is. True crime.
True crime
podcast. You know, there ain't no money left in Xbox podcasts.
No,
everything's gone. You know.
No. Indeed, tough times in the Xbox content creator community, but oh well, we persevere. We rock and roll. And all that stuff. We don't really have a lot of structured plan for the show, I suppose.
No, we never do. Never do.
But that's why I'm going to let Rand lead because he's much better at...
No. You're doing a pretty good job. What do you mean?
I don't know.
I like sitting back. I'm just chilling. I like sitting back here and not have to worry about you know.
Well, it's weird because
and...
I'm streaming this off my computer. So like it feels like in my head that I'm supposed to be hosting the show, but I'm really bad at it. And, you know, I'm also trying to play this lovely game, which is Bulwark Falconeer Chronicles, which was made by a single person, Tom Sala. And it's a very, very cool city builder, strategy city builder.
Pretty.
So, yeah, it's a very pretty game. It's very impressive that, you know, made by one person. But we're here to talk about Xbox. And, you know, there has been quite a lot of drama going on in the Xbox community, and as you mentioned, John, you gave Xbox a 2013 existential crisis with your report that Starfield will go multi-platform. The Starfield that everyone says is mid but now everyone
yeah,
secretly
7 out of 10.
wants it. So how did it feel to break that news? Because I know when I know in the past when I've broken news that was sort of a little bit sort of controversial. Like when I broke the news about Scalebound being cancelled, I was kind of nervous about the blowback.
I told you about.
Yeah.
I had told you, I was like, I think the game's been canceled. I remember telling Tim and you that, and neither of you believed me.
Yes, I didn't believe Rand, but it was true. And,
Always believe Rand.
Yeah, Rand pretends he's not inside of it. Rand knows all kinds of shit, really.
Rand's predictions.
Yeah, Rand's predictions. Yeah, Rand predictions. But how did it feel? How did it feel? Like when you got that information, then you were writing it up and you were moving through those motions.
I'll tell you how he felt. He's like, damn, I should have used different words, like considering.
yeah. Like that's the one caveat. I've been pretty what's the word? Consistent in that. Yeah, in hindsight, like, so, as Alana Pierce rightly pointed out, I have not been to journalism school. And yeah, in hindsight, I wish I'd used the word considering. If you look up, Merriam-Webster's definition of the word planning is to, take into account and make plans for, all contingencies, yada, yada, yada. But yeah, how did I feel? It was horrible. I was shitting my pants. And I presume this is a totally swear-free zone.
Oh, you can say whatever the fuck you want.
Jolly good. But yeah, it was not a pleasant weekend. Where to start? So, I had to go and verify that as best as I could, which I did, by the way, right? And I'm not going to go into super amounts of detail because I've got to protect the person that assisted me with that, but. I wouldn't have. I'm not getting a random DM, right? Like, so I was presenting the information as I had gathered it. And if you actually read the report again, a lot of people after the official business podcast update, they were like, "Liar! He didn't say Starfield and Indiana Jones." And I'm like, I didn't say that it was one of the 4 that were coming. I said post Shattered Space. I still stand by the report. I saw what I saw. That is what it is now. Plans change. Darkwing Duck. That's the catch-all for all of this insider leak malarkey. But I did not have a good weekend that weekend, and I deliberately completely unplugged and just switched my phone off and just left everything alone.
You're like, enough of this shit, right?
It was horrible, man. Like the messages, the DMs, some nasty stuff, some unpleasant stuff, and then people picking it back up to like call us out and all sorts of jazz. And it's like, I'm not here, especially from, I would say not to target, but from like Xbox fans that are super passionate about Xbox that immediately were like, swearing at me and you're a lot and like hating me for telling something, I'm not out like to PR mouth for Microsoft. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not out here to keep the secret or whatever the case may be from my perspective.
Yeah.
And it was just, it was unpleasant. But, lessons learned. Like, Xbox Era is this completely community funded thing. And I would have the privilege now, I've been able to this year step away from doing my normal full-time salaried job that I've been doing for like 10 years and try and give it a go and do Xbox Era full-time.
Damn, you were building Halo maps in Forge for 10 years? Whew.
That is not my full-time job. It takes that long. But yeah, like that is a crazy thing to be able to go and do. And it's all because of people that like watch and support us. So, it was definitely turbulent because I knew that some people that watched and supported us were torn. Like, I really like you guys, but you've really upset me. And it's this weird thing around consoles and the hardware and the tribal mentality of teams, like it's sport, right? And I feel like slowly we're going to be snapped out of this world as life goes on this year. But yeah, it was not fun.
Yeah,
that was a really long answer.
I've been there myself, and it was kind of awkward for me because I had like, as you know, I had the opposing information.
Yes.
I've got a very, very good source that says, but to be fair to you, they never said never. They just said not this year, right?
And I never said this year.
Yeah, exactly. So I think you can kind of, and to be fair to you as well, I never said that it would never happen, you know, because I think the writing probably is on the wall that the whole concept of the console exclusive is going to be eroded over the next, you know, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. I kind of feel like it's inevitable for pretty much everyone, maybe except Nintendo, because Nintendo has found ways to grow without the console market completely. Yeah. And they're expanding to theme parks. They're expanding to cinematic universes, which I don't think is an avenue available to either Sony or Microsoft. I don't think you're going to see a Microsoft cinematic universe, although the Fallout TV show is previewed very, very well. So clearly licensing that stuff out is something on the cards for Microsoft.
Where's the Fallout game, Jez?
Yeah,
they're gonna have this huge. They're gonna have one of the biggest TV shows out there, and Fallout 5 is still 11 years away.
Well, dude, the Fallout 76, man, still being updated.
Ain't nobody care about Fallout 76.
What are you talking about? It's got like tens of thousands of current players, bro.
I'm just saying,
it's very popular now.
Very popular.
It is more popular than it was, but as we've seen with like TV shows like Last of Us, when they do well, they always, you know, the people pick them back up and they're like, oh man, look at this. And granted, okay, maybe a live service like Fallout would be better suited for that, because there's you know, get into the game, whether it's through Game Pass or what have you, and buy stuff. And there's supposed to be an update for Fallout 4. You would think, hey, now would be a perfect time to release that update for Fallout 4, huh? Like,
it sure would.
You know, with the TV show. I do have to ask John though. John, how does it feel to be on Xbox 2+1 before Special Nick?
Do you know, like, it feels really good.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he even knows.
Oh
Maybe I should tell
man.
him now. Let me drop him a DM while we're chatting.
I thought we'd had Nick on before. Have we not had him on?
No, I mean Nick's been on the main Xbox 2 podcast, right?
Oh right,
when we've had like guests, you know, when we've had an extra show or two sometimes during the week. He's been on that, but he's never, you know, in the how many episodes we've been doing this. Special Nick hasn't been, you know, he hasn't done it yet. So apparently I called him Special Dick on the podcast this past Friday.
Yeah, you did.
Did I?
Yeah, you did. You called him Special Dick. What? That's so mean. Poor Nick.
I mean,
so mean.
It's funny. I don't know if you saw.
An
We just did an episode with Abubakar Salim from Surgeon Studios, the head of the team that's making Tales of Gonzalo Zhao. So and Nick is great at getting guests. Like, I've got to give the man props. He is really good at getting like really cool guests.
Or maybe we should hire him.
Yeah, no, he's ours. But Nick was like, he was the voice for Bayek in Assassin's Creed, and I'm like, yeah, wasn't he also in Ridley Scott's Raised by Wolves? And he was like, what? I was like, yeah, and I swear he's been in like some films and stuff. And I was like, look, he's on. This is a famous person. What? And he didn't know until the day of the show that he hadn't just got like a game voice actor, you know, or a game developer. He'd got like a genuine,
oh my god,
celeb. It's just like,
that's hilarious.
It was so funny. But
well, hey, live and learn, right?
I have to give Abubakar props. Like Nick was proper bouncing with him in a good Australian way, and as a Brit, Abubakar was just taking it on the chin, man. He was such a riot. So awesome. Yeah, and if you're interested in that Metroidvania, like the source of where that's come from was really cool. It's just one of those unique things where you never know with a guest. Do you know what I mean? You come on and they might not have the rapport that's necessary, and it's really awkward to get them to talk. But he was just a natural, so it was really good fun. Yeah, Nick's not responded yet, but I've dropped him a DM. I'll update if I get a vitriolic hate message back.
Funny.
He might be mad.
It's funny. Nothing but love for Special Nick. So it's just all little games, because I know, you know, I know he wants to be on at some point, and maybe we'll make that happen. But you know, when you think of Xbox Era, you gotta get the leader. You know, you gotta get SIKAMIKANICO up on here.
Appreciate
oh man,
yeah, I know. So you recently also started, probably because of your full-time status now, it's not just the Xbox Era podcast, but you and Jesse seem to, doing a couple extra shows per week, headlines and
man.
hangouts. How's that going for you guys?
It's basically just, we recognize that the Patreons are the be all and end all, right? So it's interesting getting into this because and it's useful having Jez here because he works for it's not an independent publication, but he works in the world of SEO and timely writing and headlines and getting the right headline for the right article and maximizing revenue. All of that stuff is now stuff that we have to worry about day in, day out. And it's really relentless because the news is relentless, right? So you've got to make sure you're within 10, 15 minutes of something being new information. If you haven't been advised of an embargo, you've got to get all of this stuff. So as well as juggling all of that, the one thing we really wanted to do was lean into extra content for our Patreon supporters because that's what they're there for. That they are supporting us. We've got to give them stuff they want to see. So a news show that allowed us to cover everything quickly and succinctly for people twice a week felt like a good idea. That's exclusive to Patreon members on Patreon, like via a podcast. Anyone can watch it on YouTube, but Patreon members get the audio version for themselves wherever they want to listen to it. But it also frees up the mainline podcast to actually be more fun and talk about games as opposed to rattling through endless amounts of news, and then you end up with a 4 or 5 hour show that you just.
Hey, but people seem to like 4 or 5 hours.
It's crazy.
Show. I don't know. Maybe it's because it's just people like the longer stuff. They can listen through it throughout the day. I actually got a DM while we were live one time from somebody at Xbox who's like, you need to do shows that are less than 3 hours, like while we were live. And I'm like, oh, really? But we got to give a shout out here to Scarecrow121, Jazz, to give you 10 gifted memberships for the channel.
Oh my God, thank you so much, Scarecrow.
This 10 membership gifting is to celebrate the real talent behind Xbox Era, John Sick motherfucking Mechanico.
John, I'm gonna ask you, what the fuck does SIKAMIKANICO mean, dude?
It's a song. It's a song by the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and it was a B-side.
Oh yeah, I feel like I knew that.
And it's featured in the film Wayne's World when he's going through the tunnel.
Wayne's World.
And yeah, it's just a really cool song. And back in 2001 or 2002, when my Xbox Live beta test thingy turned up with Whacked and Mech Assault, I had to pick a gamer tag, and I was like, oh, it was my favorite song at the time, and it was a really cool word. What's ridiculous is the song actually pronounces it SIKAMIKANICO, which I don't. I Briticize it and turned it into SIKAMIKANICO. But yeah, that's where it's from.
That's brilliant.
Had that, 15, 18, however old Xbox Live is now. I've had it that long.
That's pretty
Never
old.
had to change it.
What was that? Awesome. When did Xbox Live come out? 2000.
For me, 2002.
2, I think.
Yeah, March, I think it was for me.
I got an Xbox Live in 2004, so I think mine has like whatever year, 20 years. Well, no, it would be 20 years. So it says a 19 because it would be because I got around to Halo 2. I told the story in the last podcast, John. I don't know, and it's Halo related. I want to get your thoughts on it. Like, how would you feel? So back in 2004, I just got an Xbox because I was a PlayStation dude. I'll be honest. I was a PlayStation fanboy.
You were a PlayStation dude?
Oh yeah. I was a PlayStation guy.
I didn't know this.
The thing is, yeah. Oh, dude, totally. They had everything.
I'm breaking up with you.
They had Grand Theft Auto exclusive for X amount of time. They had Metal Gear. They had Devil May Cry. Like all the biggest third party games were exclusive to PlayStation. Granted, PlayStation's own single player or first party library wasn't that great at that time. I mean, I enjoyed Ratchet and Clank and Jak and Daxter, but Grand Theft Auto is Grand Theft Auto, right? Even back then. But I was finally working at my own money, and I'm like, hey, let me get an Xbox. And it was right around the time Halo 2 was coming out, a little bit before it. So I got an Xbox. I was like, I got to play this Halo game. I got like Knights of the Old Republic. I got Ninja Gaiden. Started to play some of the exclusives that they had. So I played Halo 1 and didn't like it.
What?
At all. Because by that time it was 3 years. It was 3 years old, and other games had started to copy it, which I had played. So I was just like, oh, this isn't as whatever. Like I don't really care for Halo 1. So Halo 2 is about to come out, right? And I think I've said Halo 2 is my favorite Halo game ever. I mean, I literally played that game every single day, multiplayer, for a whole year. I lost a job over it, right? But I went to EB Games, John, to pick it up.
Yeah.
And the guy was like, "Oh, you're here to get Halo 2?" I'm like, "Yep, here's my, receipt for the pre-order. Can't wait to play it." And the guy tries to upsell me the strategy guide, right? And I used to buy strategy guides if I was getting an RPG like Final Fantasy 7 or 8 or Shadow Hearts or whatever. Like, oh, I get a strategy guide just in case to go along with it, right? Like, and there was something, how big those strategy guides were back then. They were always so cool, right? So the guy's like, "Hey, you wanna get a strategy guide for this?" And I was like, "Nah, no, big deal." He's like, "I think you're gonna need it for when you play as the Arbiter, because half the game you play as a different character." And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, half the game you play as the Arbiter, who's a Covenant guy." And I was just like, I looked at him, I'm like, "Yeah," I'm like, "I don't even know what we're talking about." And then I went and played the game, and like, you play as the Arbiter. I'm like, "This motherfucker spoiled the game for me." Like, literally, he was like, "You need to get a strategy guide so you know what you're doing when you play as the Arbiter."
Good.
How would you feel? How do you feel about that, and just like spoilers in general, I guess? If that had happened to you, how furious would you have been?
I would have been really cross. It's funny though, like that Halo 2 is your favorite. Like it was my main multiplayer game for a very long time, but Halo 3 beat it out.
Well, I'm not saying like Halo 3 is worse. I'm just saying I spent more time in 2. I have more nostalgic memories, I guess, as you would say, right?
My nostalgic memory for Halo 2 was like picked it up for the midnight launch, and me and my old secondary school buddy Ben Wad. There were two Bens, and one of them was a Wad of Ben. I don't know why that nickname existed, but it was important to make that clarification. And we played through it, System Link, co-op, legendary, and we finished it by about 5 a.m., 6 a.m. maybe, like 6 hours or something. And it just, ended the cutscene, finishing the fight, and we just looked at each other, was like, "That's it." And I've never been more bitterly disappointed. Like I loved it while I was playing it, but it just ended so quickly, so I was really sad.
Yeah.
But yeah, like spoilers in games, you kind of just have to deal with them now. Like it reminds me of the story I heard recently, like because it was a bit hot water with Capcom, right? And the microtransactions. And a certain headline about someone wanting to avoid spoilers and not reading a certain review guide.
That was one and only Jez. Indeed, yes.
Yeah. Didn't read the review guide. I
get it.
Apparently, I offended a major publisher by saying that I don't read the review guides. Yeah, not Capcom even, but someone else reached out to me and said, "Oh, our team's disappointed to hear that you don't read the review guides because we put a lot of work and effort into those." And I was just like, dude, like. I just felt like they were piling on me,
man. But this is the thing, though. You're an actual gamer, right? And I think that this is an important distinction to make, and it's one thing that kind of bugs me about how video games are covered. Like the industry is fundamentally broken. Like the way that video games are talked about online.
I was actually talking to Rand about this recently, like with regards to Dragon's Dogma 2, because I think like I played Dragon's Dogma 2 once for my review and I gave it 9 out of 10, right? Because I had a blast with it. It was really fun.
Spoiled it for me.
Yeah,
as well.
You told me to, man. You're never gonna play that game. And I was I went through it really quickly. I missed out a lot of the side quests, and I sort of like, because I'd rushed it, I think like I probably missed how it does when you're playing it like more meticulously. It does feel different, and a lot more of the flaws did present themselves on the second playthrough. So I was like, I'd assumed that some of the plot threads. I'm not going to spoil it here, by the way, for those who haven't seen it. But some of the plot threads in Dragon's Dogma 2, on my first playthrough, they were never resolved. And it was like, well, what was the point of all this stuff that I did? And I just thought that I'd missed them because I was rushing through it. So I kind of gave Capcom the benefit of the doubt there. But then when I actually played it properly and did literally everything, which took me twice as long, and there's no way I would have hit embargo, I realized that the plot points are never actually resolved. So I was like, hang on a sec.
Oh.
They're never actually, these are just never addressed. These aspects of the story are just never addressed again. So I was kind of irritated at that point. And I was kind of like, well, I probably wouldn't have given it the same score, you know. It's kind of difficult for Windows Central because we don't have a very flexible score system. So we can't do 8.5 or anything. So like I think I probably would have dropped it down to an 8.5 because I still think 8 is a bit low. So like it's still a 9 out of 10. I can't do 8.5 because our system doesn't allow for it. Because we're on a 5-star scoring system, right? Which is really annoying. And I've asked for more flexibility because PC Gamer gets flexibility, but we don't for some reason. I don't know. But yeah, I do agree with you that the whole like rushing out to embargo and you know and all that kind of stuff. You don't play games like a gamer if you're rushing to hit an embargo, which is like, and me not reading the review guide, that's me trying to play the game like a gamer.
Yeah,
but even when I'm
exactly my point.
Yeah, exactly. But even rushing to an embargo, I'm still not fully playing the game like a gamer. I need to do like what some other people do, like Skill Up and ACG, where they just ignore the embargo and come out afterwards. But it's really hard in print to do that because you're basically telling Google that you're not as good as IGN if you're not hitting the embargo. So
well, yeah, this is what bugs me, right? Like I was chatting to Jesse about this, and let's not name any publications, but Jesse played through Dragon's Dogma 2 for review, and I think he managed to put in something like 35-40 hours, like paraphrasing. I'm not entirely sure. And he was like, I am convinced that there are some people out there that have written reviews for this game that saw the initial roll of credits. No spoilers.
Jess said the same thing to me. Jess said the same thing. He's like, I read this review, not going to name an outlet, and he's like, I am absolutely sure they didn't actually beat the game.
Yeah.
Based on what they were saying in their review.
And it irritates me. It irritates me that like and look, I don't want to cast aspersions over all of these other outlets. Like I get it, they're businesses, right? And they have to make money. But there is this such rush to be first, this rush to do everything straight away. Like we're lucky that we can do as much as we can do. But it really bugs me when you see like almost half-assed, like they don't care because it's just a paycheck. Which is why, you know, I appreciate when you like, yeah, I didn't read the review guide because you're a video gamer that happens to be a writer, you know, and you love playing video games. I feel like so many out that cover the industry now maybe don't really love video games very much anymore.
There are a lot of them that are jaded.
Jaded.
I've had this conversation with Jez where I feel a lot, maybe not necessarily the young reviewers, but a lot of the old guard I feel are jaded. Which, you know, hey, it happens. You know, I'm sure we'll get there at some point, or maybe not, because I still love his video games as much as I wouldn't say like I love them as much maybe as I loved them when I was 20, but I still love them, right? But like sometimes I'll read reviews from people or I see scores for games, and it's just like, this guy sounds jaded as hell. And I think that you know, you don't really see a lot of older reviewers anyways. They all end up leaving the industry to go work for the companies themselves. They've showered with 10s. Oh, I work there now. Hey, like the one IGN guy that gave like Last of Us Part 2 a 10 went to go work for Naughty Dog or whatever, right? Like they all end up at like, you know, at some of those studios. So
yeah. And I've been on the other side of that fence, you know, like on the video game making fence, and it's horrible, and I don't want to do it. I've seen how the sausage is made.
No, nobody cares how the sausage is made.
I have a lot of I care a lot about what developers have to do to actually get a game into our hands. Like I empathize, but like I used to really want to pursue level design, right? As a route into the industry. But in hindsight, like I'm glad I've ended up where I've ended up, because like seeing how the sausage is made and the bugginess, and you know, like the games that we play predominantly, and people moan about broken games, try playing one 6 months out. Like it is buggy as, like, you have no idea. You know, the majority have no idea how truly buggy things can be.
I've got like a really weird story about that, but continue though.
Well, I was just, the way that the whole industry kind of covers things nowadays just feels miserable and vindictive. Like, we talk about Xbox a lot in the news, and as an Xbox branded site, why do we exist? Because, like, you can tell that there are so many people in this that just don't want Xbox around. So when Xbox, talk about this multi-platform strategy, I'm like, I can't blame them, because there is, just release great games. And like yesterday, I still saw, or when the Hellblade 2 previews dropped, like I still saw someone use the phrase, finally, it's the most important exclusive ever for Hellblade 2. Like, every game that Microsoft seems to release is the most important. It's going to save the brand. It's do or die. It's the last chance. And it's been this way for years. And there's nothing, even though they have the broadest variety of genre, right? They don't go crazy and target these. And this is the thing. This is what PlayStation, arguably, in my opinion, have done to the industry, is they've pushed these development costs and the desire for the best graphics and the best mocap and the best animation and the best. Oh, games cost 300 million now. I don't feel like Microsoft spend 300 million on their games. They do live in a more AA, let's try and experiment a little bit space. And that's what I value in gaming. Like, I value a bit of variety. I don't want to play movies.
They don't spend 300 million. They spend 500 million on Halo Infinite.
Wasted.
400 million on Fable.
Yeah, man. It's a complicated topic, right? But the minute you try and voice it or put it into words, you get labeled fanboy or whatever the case may be.
Journalists hate being criticized. They fucking hate it. And I know that I'm like hated by so many like those veteran journalists, the San Francabao, we talk about it, yeah. Because like I have openly criticized the way that the media's covered Xbox, because they cover it from... It's gross, and they cover it from a position of people who don't use it. I don't cover PlayStation because I don't use PlayStation. I don't want to have to pretend that I care about PlayStation. I don't. You know where my biases are, but these people, they pretend to be multi-platform gamers. They pretend to care about Xbox, or they're supposed to present a sort of level-headed view of gaming in general, and they just don't, because they're not personally interested in that stuff. I don't think anyone should have to pretend that they care about Xbox,
Yeah.
But these people do, and that's why outlets like us exist. For people who actually do use the fucking product.
Exactly. It bugs me no end, man. Like, you're absolutely right. Like, it does feel like this weird, like, oh yeah. And the thing is, if you took Xbox out of the market, if they just disappeared, oh, you guys would have a rough time making any money, because
it'd be weird.
What are your weekly news? What is your weekly news? You've got a 2-week Game Pass drop. You've got, the constant, what are Xbox doing, are changing the industry. PlayStation, Nintendo just are silent all the time. Like, there's no parasocial.
It's true, actually, yeah.
And I've actually said many a times that I feel like Xbox should actually be more like PlayStation and Nintendo. That Phil should be not be doing these interviews, because I don't think they help. I think they hurt more than anything.
It's not useful for Phil when a quote, something that was perfectly true and was accurate to the business 2 years ago is then thrown back in his face.
Yeah, because he could go on and like his most recent Polygon stuff, right? That was talked about, which we'll talk about, like the handheld and the other stores and stuff. People, I think for a lot of Xbox fans, they're tired of hearing about the future. They want to hear about the present. And sometimes when you have these conversations, like when Phil tries to explain the industry, people view that as just, oh, he's just making excuses. Like the whole Gen Z stuff and the whole, oh, these people, the TikTok generation, these kids that are grown up with iPhones and iPads, they don't want consoles. How are we gonna cater to them? How are we gonna get them to get into this? And it's Sony and Nintendo are having these conversations, but they're having them privately, right? Phil's, going out there publicly and stating this stuff, but to a lot of people who don't care about how the sausage is made, they hear Phil's quotes and they're just like, you're making excuses for why Xbox is doing what they're doing. And I don't think it really helps, because even the way the media covers his stuff, right? It doesn't help. Like, you had a VGC article about Phil Spencer, the man who saved Xbox will be the man who killed it, because they had an opinion piece about, like, Phil's comments about the Polygon stuff, and they even presented it that way with a great line of like, "Imagine if you just took the $70 billion you spent on Activision and Blizzard and made 200 games, 200
That may as
Spider-Man
well
2s or whatever." Right?
I have no idea how the end
Yeah.
industry works.
So I've actually said, like, I don't really think Phil being out there and talking about this, like, future plans is really works anymore. Maybe it did in the past, but I think a lot of Xbox fans are now just being like, yo, Phil, like, where are the games? Like, I don't want to hear about the future again. Like, you sold us the future back in 2018 and back in 2020. Like, we don't want to be sold the future once more before you've delivered on your promises you made at the start of the generation and stuff like that. So I think it hurts more than it helps. And that's just my opinion on it, but
I want to see punished Phil. I want to see Phil turn around to like IGN and be like, yeah, we're not supplying you guys with review codes anymore. Like, sorry guys. Like all of the big ones, Games Radar, Game
They
Rant,
should, because PlayStation will. PlayStation cuts people off.
Yeah, and no one
much.
Yep.
But not like the big ones. They will never cut off IGN or whatever. But they definitely cut off people if things go the wrong way. But Xbox
was it Suicide Squad that IGN didn't get a code because they effectively tanked the game before it even got out the door.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and look, don't get me wrong. I am all for, if you have a preview of a game and you don't think it's very good, you can say that in a preview kind of way, right? Like, I think you can play the game a little bit with how a preview is meant to work. Here's what I liked. Here's what I didn't like. But to put in the headline as the biggest video game company in the world, a video game publication in the world, this sucks, effectively. Like I would be really pissed if I was the publisher.
And it seemed like Warner Brothers words. And my Phil comments are a bit like, I like hearing what Phil has to say about the industry and where it's moving and where he thinks it's going to go. I just don't think the audience cares anymore for that.
No,
is what I'm saying. And like, Sony and Nintendo get away with it by not saying anything, and it works.
I think I would go a bit further and say that I think maybe like don't talk to these outlets about it, but maybe talk to the smaller guys, because I think like the passionate fans. And I know I'm biased, but don't talk. I could say this. Don't even talk to us. Talk to Xbox Era or talk to Colt about it. Because we are interested in what Phil is saying. We are interested in the wider brand. But I think the way that like the outlets that don't care about the brand can frame things in a way that can sort of continue to feed this narrative that Xbox dead. So
well,
and this isn't me advocating for Windows Central or anything. Like, even don't talk to us. There's plenty of other Xbox grassroots creators that Microsoft could and should talk to instead of these outlets who don't use the product and don't care and don't want to understand.
Well, Phil was going to talk to XBOXERA until John gave everybody an Xbox existential nightmare.
Hey,
with the Starfield thing. So.
We obviously would like to have had Phil on again for episode 200, but timings didn't work out. But we'll try and do something over June, the summer showcase period. But like a great example of like games industry, and I was stunned at this, right? So you guys, and I don't know, Jess, you probably got someone on the Windows Central team reviewing this at the moment. Harold Halibut, the Game Pass game. Have you seen this one?
Yeah,
we often skip the indie games, sadly, because we just don't have the bandwidth.
It's a shame. Fair. But Harold Halibut's unique in that it's been in development for 14 years, made by a bunch of guys who were like, we're going to make a game, but we don't really know how. So we're going to make it like using stop animation. And then they realized, this is complicated. And they came up with their own system. And I got to go to this preview event, right, for an hour and a half with these two developers who have poured their heart and soul into making a game for the first time, first studio, through grants, through getting Game Pass deals, everything else. Mm-hmm. And they gave us this absolute treasure trove of amazing behind the scenes footage. Like, you think about it, everything in the game, every single thing you see on the screen, for the most part, has been handmade, sculpted, scanned into the game as a real material, and then manipulated in the engine. And it is phenomenal. It looks like you're playing a Wallace and Gromit film in real time. It is gorgeous.
This game, Harold Halibut.
Harold Halibut, right? Preview event. I was in there, tons of outlets. I won't name them. Tons and tons of the usual suspects, right? About this unique look at how this was made. And all of the previews were, here's the first 2 chapters of the game. Oh, it's really interesting. You know, you do this. It's a walking simulator. Blah, blah, blah. And none of them they all had access to this material. None of them, not a single outlet actually said, here's how they did it. Here's what's actually interesting here. Here's the real story, right? Beyond, it's a point and click adventure game. And we were the only ones that did. And I made a 17-minute, like, here's how they did this. Isn't this nuts? With all of the behind the scenes footage, how, you know, they took it from sculpting to scanning. And I was like, the previews came out. I was like, oh, I wonder if anyone else has done. Not a single outlet had covered any of it to any degree. And I think that's where passion has overridden, you know, like, just, yeah, let's just do the job. Do you know what I mean?
I totally get it, you know, and it's something I've been cognizant
really
of.
Sad.
Yeah, it does. You know, and I've been in the green room at like showcases and overheard the sort of professional journalists who did go to journalism school and stuff. And the way a lot of them just sort of, they do take it like it's just a 9 to 5, and they don't really, the passion for gaming is sort of waned, you know, and that's not true of everyone. Of course it's not.
No.
But you can sort of tell that, but that's, for some people, the passion has waned. But at the same time, you know, it's hard when you are a big outlet in the spotlight and you are being attacked daily by conspiracy theorists and trolls and stuff. So I can imagine for some people, it's hard not to be jaded and it's hard not to lose the passion for it when you're being attacked all day constantly, which is another reason why I like covering Xbox, because there are, of course, there are trolls, but the fan base, like, when you serve your fan base passionately, they'll, you know, respond positively back, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I absolutely love my job, and I think that's why I've been able to maintain the passion, at least. And I think like when you do have a Patreon and stuff, and, you know, a Discord, and you can sort of take your audience out of that toxic soup of Twitter and stuff. By the way, I put up a trailer of what's it called again? Harold
Halibut.
Yeah, it looks stunning.
Strout.
Yeah.
And that's what's crazy. Everything you see is a real model in the real world that's been scanned into the game. And not to pimp my own stuff, but if you want to see how they did it, head over to the XBOXERA YouTube channel and go find that video, because it is a phenomenal story. But yeah, like it's you're talking about, like, I wish Xbox would play the game a little bit and actually just ignore the bigger outlets and go to the ones that give passion. But then obviously we would then be accused of just, well, you've got Xbox in the name, you're just going to be biased and super positive. You gave Redfall an 8.5, right?
Yeah.
And like Redfall's a great example.
You did give Redfall a 9.5.
Okay, but let me ask you a different question. I didn't give Redfall an 8.5, but do you think Redfall's a 3 out of 10? I genuinely
no. I don't think it's a 3 out of 10. No.
See, the thing,
do you think it's a 4 or a 5?
I think it's actually right where it deserves to be on Metacritic. I think it's a 6.
What did I give it, Rand? Did I give it a 7?
I don't know what you gave it, but it's one of the few games, like, you guys know me. If I start a game, I finish it. Redfall is one of the few games where I deleted it after 5 hours. It was so bad. Maybe I would even give it lower than 5. That game was just...
Did you play it on your
awful.
own?
I actually was playing in co-op with Colt, and I just couldn't stand it.
Wow.
So I finished it, and I played it solo, and I didn't hate it. Like, I tell you some games that I have reviewed that I did hate. Far Cry 6 was one of them. And I think
you hate Ubisoft, though, so...
I'm so sick of Ubisoft's copy and paste formula, right? And Redfall has some of that in it. But at least it has, like, a twist. You know, vampires...
So you're not excited for Star Wars Outlaws? Well, coming out August 30th or whatever day that is?
Well, this is the thing. It has a twist. It's Star Wars.
But it's basically third-person Far Cry?
We'll see. We'll see if Ubisoft's learned any lessons. And maybe I've been away from Ubisoft stuff for so long that the last Ubisoft game I enjoyed was probably
Prince of Persia was...
No, I haven't played Prince of Persia. I haven't played Prince of Persia, so that's on my to-do list. But I think, like, probably, I want to say Black Flag, maybe?
Oh, God, that was such a good game.
Yeah, that was a really good game.
I'm so lucky that Ubisoft realised what they had and said, okay, we'll make a full-fledged pirate adventure
Yeah.
RPG type thing, and then they gave us Skull and Bones, which actually weirdly was bad, but also there was something. The grind was somehow really addicting. But like I've played a bunch of Ubisoft, like Avatar, one of the most gorgeous games this gen, I think, in terms of engine capability on console and on PC. And people just write it off as this Far Cry clone, which it kind of is. But when you actually get into it, it's also not. It asks you to rely a lot more on actually just manually tracking your way around rather than go to tower and unlock area.
Well,
Um,
the thing
yeah.
about Ubisoft, I think, like, which I think increasingly developers are realizing that you don't have to handhold as much as you'd think, and I think like putting exploratory systems in the game that are like a game mechanic is far more interesting. Like Dragon's Dogma exploration is miles ahead of Ubisoft for that. I mean, the downside of Dragon's Dogma is the story is awful. The story's not great. It has some great plot twists and stuff, but when you zoom out and actually look at the whole story and the way it's delivered, it's not great. But it doesn't matter that it's not great because the combat is so good, so dynamic. The exploration is really interesting and rewarding, and all the things that Ubisoft games often aren't. You know, and I say that as someone who hasn't really played Valhalla, and I've got friends who really love Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and it's kind of a game I also want to play because I'm into Viking stuff in general. But I've just been so burned out on Ubisoft's form because it's so familiar. It's so familiar, and you know it's going to be a certain way. You know it's not going to challenge you. It's not going to challenge any aspect of anything. You know, it's not going to be too hard. It's not going to make you think. It's just going to be sort of, and there's nothing wrong with those kind of experiences if you like them. It's just became something that I just started resenting at some point. I actually like Scarecrow just mentioned Division 2. I actually really enjoyed Division 2 as well as a service game. I think Ubisoft's much better at making service games.
Yeah, they know how to do a grind. I think
Yeah.
they've got the grind mechanics down.
Yeah.
But the problem with service games in general now, especially covering the industry, is I ain't got time for that shit. Like I have not got time.
Yeah.
Like I was playing Skull and Bones, and I managed to get codes to review it with a crew of friends, right? And we're all playing
Crew
and
of
giving
ships.
yeah, like, and we get to the grind point, and then I have to bounce off and work on the next thing, and then they're just I log back on with them, and they've been just no lifing it for 4 days, and they're like a miles ahead, and I'm like, oh, and then you kind of lose the desire to try and catch up, so you're kind of like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then the next one comes along, and you've just got to move on, like. Forge and Halo for me was the one kind of constant thing over the last couple of years that I'd always dip back into. But even that, I've kind of had to hang up my Forge hat and be like, I am too busy to spend like 90 hours building something now. I got to step away. So yeah, Ubisoft games and the grind, they're not for me. Give me unique, small, clever indie experiences that I've not played before. That's what I want to play.
Well,
predominantly.
Hellblade sounds like you
Yeah,
your alley.
I will
then.
be reviewing Hellblade 2.
Oh,
Are you
nice.
surprised by the discourse
Around 30
surrounding
FPS.
Hellblade 2? And well, because I think I said to Jazz, I was like, amazing previews, but nobody's going to talk about that because everyone's going to talk about 30 FPS. Like how it's sometimes it always seems there's just something hanging over an Xbox game.
That's the industry again, right? Like it doesn't have to be. Right? When the previews dropped, right? And obviously I would have loved, and I'm sure Windows Central would have loved to have had the opportunity to preview Hellblade 2, right? But I get it. Microsoft have limited scope in terms of all the outlets they want to reach, and they touched on the big ones. They touched
Or
on
they
some
want to fly out, I guess.
German-speaking YouTubers, some, to try and cover as much of the globe as possible. I totally get it. But then they come out, and what do I do as an outlet, right? I'm like, okay, I'll round up all the big ones, and I'll do a preview roundup article. Hey, the previews are here. Here's everything that everyone's saying. And it's all fairly positive, right? Apart from the one guy that was like, this game's so good, I hope it comes to PlayStation. Apart from that, ridiculous statement for an exclusive, but whatever. But then I see the headlines from the outlets that didn't get invited that are massive. And what do they focus on for their SEO? What do they focus on? Do they focus on the positive?
I saw Eurogamers. They were Hellblade 2 is 30 FPS, and the studio creators left.
Now
that was theirs.
Fair play from a journalist perspective. That is all news. Except if you've really looked at Tamim's Instagram, it's open, by the way, as far as I know, it's public. He's been living the dream for 2 years. I don't think he's been pretty, into development of a AAA game for Ninja Theory. So, like, it's not really news. Like, yeah, he got his Lambo and he's out. But it's that approach now all the time. And that's what Microsoft can't fight. They can't do anything about it. Is if we've got good news here, someone's going to, because it's engagement and we get clicks and we get ad revenue. So we're going to post this. And the journalist will say, yeah, well, it's news. Like, I've not done anything wrong. But man, it feel like, do you want to live in a world where it's just always the thing you're going to lead with, the negative angle every time for the rest of your life? No wonder they're jaded.
I mean, I get it. I think Sam put that headline out on Windows Central 2 about the frame rate, because I don't want to cover other companies' previews, especially outlets that have actually threatened us with legal ramifications if we cover their articles. Yeah,
really,
a very big one too, very big one.
No way.
Yeah, they threatened us. They sent, and I think it's because I called them out on Twitter for not linking to us in some of their social imagery. And I was like, oh,
okay,
great.
I know who that is now. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm with you.
And their retaliation was, okay, well, we're going to threaten you to cover our proprietary information in our articles, even if you backlink.
Wow.
So yeah, so it's like, why would I want to do a roundup of Hellblade previews and promote other outlets? In that scenario. And I think we still did do a roundup of previews, but I don't know, man. It's
a tricky one, right? Because I'm balancing, like, yeah, does my community that I exist for, the only reason I exist is because they support us. Do they want to read just a bunch of negative crap that is, yeah, it's accurate, and I can mention that, hey, yeah, it's 30 FPS, it says it in these, but like you saw it 5 times over the last 4 years. It's been 30 FPS every time. Like, is this a surprise? Like, it just feels like, and that is the Microsoft way, and it's not their fault, but it just feels like the industry is constantly geared for that. And you won't see that, and then you see the PlayStation side of the camp be like, oh, PlayStation first party games get a 60 FPS support mode every time, and I'm like, and you'll see industry people argue that point as well, and I'm like, yeah, but are you also acknowledging that God of War Ragnarok and Spider-Man 2 are iterative sequels from a last gen engine, right, that can do that, whereas this is a truly next gen on the next gen engine that has pushed the scope out to the nth degree for visual clarity? Like, do you acknowledge those details, those nuances? No, of course you don't. You just list war, and it has to be compared, and there has to, and I can see someone in the chat, it has to be a winner, there has to be a loser, and that is just the way it is. That's a sad way to live. I hate it.
It's true.
Grumble.
Yeah.
It's a weird, publishing's a weird game, because like
it is.
Not you trying to address your own audience, but like you'll see this as Xbox era grows. More and more of your audience will not be direct traffic. It'll actually be Google. It'll be people that come in through Google News. They click in and then they click out and never see your site again. They don't care who the outlet is. They just want to read the article, and then they'll leave and never come back. Or they'll come back the next time there's something that interests them. It's almost like, like a subscription feed, algorithmic, and increasingly like you're not addressing your potential core audience. You're addressing Google, and you're designing the headlines for Google, designing the body text for Google, and we have
horrible, isn't it?
Yeah, it's that's the way publishing's become, and it's like, well, if IGN and GameSpot are doing it that way, you have to do it too, or else you're not competing with them. You're losing. You're dying. You have to play the game that way, and it's the same on YouTube. You see, like YouTubers, all sort of like the bigger people, they're all sort of following a sort of specific strategy to some degree. And that's why Patreon's so cool, because it can free you from that algorithmic churn to some degree, and then you can focus on actually just being creative, which is awesome. And Google's like, it's such a blessing, but also so annoying at the same time. But anyway, that's That's no one wants to know. How the
We
sausage
could
is
talk
made,
about
right?
it for ages. It's probably not that interesting for people listening, but yeah, it's a
No.
weird juggling act of
Huge juggling act.
you know, like I don't want to be clickbait, but I need to be because that's what the SEO gods demand, and it's just like constantly trying to find that fine line. But you're right, Patreon is, you know, and the fact that there is an audience out there that are like, oh, thank God you exist. You know, like I want to subscribe to this content, and then you get to go and make content. Like I'm doing a challenge tomorrow. One of the community knows that I hate horror games. I am a complete wuss. Can't do it. I couldn't even play King Kong the movie, the game, because I can't handle being chased by things. Right? And what have I got to play tomorrow?
Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 7,
Alien Isolation.
Oh my
I
lord!
don't want to do it. I'm so terrible.
Even I wouldn't play that.
Okay, but so are you starting from the beginning?
Yeah, I've one of the community gifted me a copy on PC, so I'll be playing on ultra wide, alone in the dark.
Well, the thing with that is, are you streaming
baby.
it too, or just
Yeah, we'll
playing
be streaming it for our Patreon and YouTube members tomorrow at 7:30 UK time.
Spoilers: it does take a little bit of time before the alien shows up.
Well, I played the game. I bought it because I love sci-fi. I love aliens, and this is my experience of the game. Oh wow, they've really honoured the original art style, and this is great. And oh my god, the aliens hit! And I turned the console off, and I've never.
I beat the game on the hardest difficulty without ever getting killed by the alien.
Aren't you special? God damn.
Well, you know, I'm just saying. You know that. Remember that game got a 4 from IGN. I believe McCaffrey gave it a 4.
Wow.
Mainly because of the way it's saved, because you can only save at terminals. I don't know if you remember that. But a lot of people would keep on playing, and then they would die and potentially lose like 2 hours of time.
Oof.
Because there's no auto saves. Yeah, I remember back in 2014, that was a big thing. IGN giving that game a 4, and I remember sitting there like, that game is not a 4.
They gave it a 4?
You'd have, I mean,
IGN gave Alien Isolation a 4.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, let me bring it up. I know it was incredibly low. Alien Isolation, IGN review. They gave it a 5.9. Okay.
Wow.
They gave it a 5.9.
Still
back
pretty
when
low.
They I guess they were doing points instead of like what they do it now. But yeah, who wrote this? Was it McCaffrey? It was McCaffrey. Yep.
That is harsh, man.
5.9.
That's
and
not
I remember,
game, dude.
No, it is definitely not. But you know, opinions are what they are. Now, I wanted to transition because I don't know how long we have before, John. We could probably do podcasts for 5 hours.
I can relax for as long as you want, mate.
All right. I wanted to transition more to the cool topics, you know. Like,
okay, the current.
But I wanted to first talk about Halo with you.
Okay.
Because I know you're a big Halo guy. Yep. You make Forge maps, you do all that sort of stuff. You're on like the Forge Council or whatever it's called, right? Me and Jez had this discussion on the podcast on Friday about the new direction that Halo should be going. Because even though when you talk to Halo YouTubers and people that play Halo, everyone's like, oh my god, it's so amazing. Gaz put out a video talking about how incredible it is now, and oh man, imagine if it launched like this. It seems like Halo Infinite hitting its stride, right? Even though they've removed seasons, they're doing like different sort of things. The question is, where do you go from here? Right? Pierre's come in, I don't know, saved Halo Infinite, if you really want to call it saving. But what's next for Halo? Where do you go? Like, what's his vision for the future? There's the rumors that Certain Affinity's working on something, but then people say that project's canceled, and who knows what's going on there. Yeah. And me and Jez were having this discussion, and was like, well, can't really do like a Halo Infinite 2, because that naming convention doesn't work.
Yeah.
Do you do a Halo 7? Do you continue the story, have Master Chief fight the Endless, and just continue the story of what's going on and build a new multiplayer? Or do you go for the ultra risky reboot and just start everything over from scratch? Redo Halo 1, but brand new, almost like Final Fantasy VII Remake. Because I was playing Final Fantasy VII Remake at the time, right? Which is why we were having this conversation. What do you do about the future of Halo, John?
Man, it's such
The
a
$1
it's such
million
a
question.
it's a massive thing that you could spend hours on it. If it were me, gun to my head, like the 343 team, regardless of the amount of crap they cop on Twitter, every single person I've met that works at that studio is super passionate and loves Halo. Now, I don't always agree with what their collective vision, as has been ascribed, by whatever the project is, in full. I really like Halo Infinite. Like I did, it was a weird one because I got, for folks listening that didn't know, I got a random DM one day in 2019 from Unishek, who's the community manager for Halo. Hey, I want to talk about some Halo stuff with you, but you need to sign an NDA. I can mention this now, so don't worry. I'm still under NDA for some other stuff, so I have to be careful what I can talk about. But anyway, long story short, they flew us out there to go and work, and as a community forger that had worked and done a load of stuff for Halo 5, they flew us out for opinions on the new Forge mode, right? And we kind of had early access at that. I got to spend 3 or 4 days at the studio, and do all of that stuff. And Xbox Era was like just a thing in 2020 when it had started, right? We were just brand new, and it was really, really unique to see behind the curtain. I saw loads of cool stuff that I can never talk about. But it was really cool to meet that team and hear from the passion and all that kind of stuff. We fast forward to the game being revealed, and I was surprised at what I saw at the reveal, because it wasn't what I'd seen behind the scenes, right? I was like, what's happened here? I don't know all the full details of what happened there, but what happened, and we fast forward, and Halo Infinite's out. And I love the game for what it is. I think at times the multiplayer feels the best it ever feels. But I feel like 343's focus on this perpetual HCS, always competitive, has lost the thing that made people play Halo every night, right? The silliness, right? And that's slightly coming back in with things like Grunpocalypse now, which is why there's so many people saying, yeah, Halo's amazing now. But in terms of what to do next, I have to admit, like, I've played enough of that game to be like, the old games are always going to be there. I would love to see them do a completely fresh, ultra gritty reboot of the whole franchise. Like, bring it all back to the beginning and reset the tone. Because the thing that's always bugged me about Halo's since Bungie stopped was, like, through 4, 5, Infinite, we never had a moment like the Scarabs coming over the hill in Halo 3, where it was like, holy shit, this is ridiculously epic. And it always stunned me, and especially with Infinite, with this open world, you could feel the kind of the pain that they obviously went through trying to put that together, because you had these wonderful firefight style 30 seconds of fun thing, which have been a thing since Reach, that seems to have become the new way to play Halo. And I feel like there's so much more available there. The Flood is such a unique enemy that could be brought back to do some amazing things with. So yeah, I'd go that route, Rand. I would chuck everything out. I would have a core team focusing on the multiplayer and make it an entirely separate creature. Doesn't have to tie together at all, right? Entirely separate creature. Focus a really unique single player linear adventure. Bring back all of it, all the original lore, but throw some twists in, throw more detail in, go really, really hard on it, and take some risks. Because the problem that they have is they try and cater for every single possible fan base and outpouring of, I want a machinima mode, and I really want zombies and Griffball, and it's like you can't do that now. You've got to just.
So you essentially want a reboot. Or like
I want them to take some massive creative risks instead of trying to walk every line to make everybody happy, because then it just feels like a game designed a little bit by committee, and and that's never a good result. That's how you end up with Ubisoft games, right?
Oh yeah, because like I watch what Arrowhead's doing with Helldivers 2, right? And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, that could be an ODST game.
Yep.
Why shouldn't, like, everything they're doing there? I can imagine it being a Halo game. Third person, ODST, drop pods, Flood coming in, brutes coming in, elites. Like, almost everything in that game, I'm just imagining like that's could have been a Halo game.
Yep.
But it's
Painful,
sort of,
isn't it?
yeah, and it's what they're doing with the live service aspect of it seems to
I love
be very unique.
Do you play
in the
it?
space.
Do you play online?
No. I haven't played it, but I pay attention to what's going on because my buddies are sort of into it. But I'm like watching, and I see that stuff, and I'm like, man, that's really cool what they're doing. But just watching it, and I'm just like, why wasn't there like an ODST version of this? Like, it's like set up perfectly for it, and that's kind of like, you know, it kind of makes me think of the missed opportunities with Halo. Like, Halo's was Microsoft's biggest franchise, but they didn't really do anything with it. Right? It was just like, here's the mainline games. We know there were Lego games or Mega Bloks games that were canceled or whatever, and it's just like they should have been doing way more with Halo than they ever than what we ended up with. And I'm just like, man, a lot of missed opportunities here. I don't know if that's, you know, the leadership previously at 343 or the leadership at Microsoft, but sometimes you watch this stuff and it's just like, yeah, like there's so many things you could have done or things you could be doing, right?
Well, it makes you wonder, like with Arrowhead, like maybe the reason Arrowhead was able to do it was because they're in Sweden, they're miles away from Sony headquarters, and from what I've heard, Sony was really hands off with that game, like to the point of like sometimes Arrowhead was like wondering like why are we getting such little communication? But maybe they were better off for it. And
maybe
they got to a point where it was like they're a small and nimble team that can actually do something really innovative and laser focus on that innovative risk. And look how well it's paying off. I think it's the best live service game out there right now. The pace of engaging with the community and leaning into the in-game lore that people are creating, it's kind of like it's what EVE Online does. And what EVE Online has tried to do with shooters in the past, but not been able to pull it off. Because EVE Online had a load of these like these shooter spin-offs, and I think they've got another one coming on the way. And they've tried to do this, EVE Online has, where it's sort of like it's a shooter and it ties to the wider conflict, EVE Online, which is like it's a space MMO simulator kind of game. But they never managed to pull it off. And in fact, I think at one point, wasn't it PlayStation exclusive, the EVE Online shooter? I think it was, right?
Yeah, what was it called?
Maybe it was during the PS3 era.
I was asked, like, should I pick up Helldivers 2? And you know, I was like, this is how I described it. It is the most Xbox game that Sony have ever released.
That's so true. That's so true.
It feels like it's an Xbox game, and you know, I think
that is a great headline. You should write an article with that headline. Watch how much clicks you'll get and watch how much hate you get.
It leans into all the things that Sony are not traditionally known for. It is not a AAA, well animated, mocap to the guild cutscene filled game, right? It is a live service game. It's a shooter. It's super American, super tongue-in-cheek. Yes, it riffs off of Starship Troopers in hilarious ways, but it is absolute blast with friends. Like, I've played it a lot, and it's probably been one of my favorite.
How dare you? You're an Xbox guy. You should be playing.
I play good games, man. Like, I play good games that I enjoy.
I had somebody say that to me when I said I was playing Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Really?
Like, yes, I got a DM being like, I can't believe you're an Xbox content creator and you're playing Final Fantasy. I'm like, bro, if you like, I don't, unless it's on Nintendo, I don't skip games I want to play. You know what I mean? Where's Donataku and Chad? Like, if it's on Nintendo, it's not a great game. Skip, right? Like Zelda or, you know, Mario or whatever. But, you know, if there's other games I want to play, I'm gonna play them. But you know how tribalism is in this thing. And, you know, it's not just the
ultimate crossover that they need to do, you know, to really bring Halo back to the forefront of people's minds as an IP. It's a really simple one. It's a really simple partnership, and it would blow people away. People would just be like, okay, I'm in. They would just play it all the time. Bring up EA. Hey guys, Battlefield always sucks. Right? It always flops, and then you take a year to fix it. Stop doing that. Partner up, Covenant versus UNSC, Halo Battlefield. Done. that
Well-
game would sell a fucking shit ton. Imagine it. Imagine Covenant cruisers coming in, Phantom dropships, and you're in the Phantom dropship and you're dropping off, and you've got Banshees flying overhead, and you've got all the destruction like plasma melting all the concrete and stuff, and you can play as an ODST or a Spartan or a tank gunner or all of these cool things. Imagine how good it would be with Battlefield's engine and the kind of art style that Halo would bring to it.
Well, I've kind of made that argument before, but not about Battlefield, but about Call of Duty. And they actually own Call of Duty. Can you imagine Call of Duty ODST? Or like, or StarCraft ODST? Because I'm like, not StarCraft, Call of Duty StarCraft. Not StarCraft ODST, but why not? Let's go crazy. But one of the issues I've always had personally, and this is a me thing, one of the issues I've always had personally with Halo is that I can't gel with the combat flow of Halo. I'm too COD-brained. I'm too COD-pilled. Or Unreal Tournament 99 pilled, maybe more accurate. So like it's really hard for me to unwind that mentality. Also like Battlefield as well. Like I play Battlefield a lot too, or I did back before they hit the bed with it. So like it's really hard to break the Battlefield Call of Duty gameplay style and apply that to Halo, because Halo is a very different beast. So like what if there was a Halo COD game that sort of bridge the gap between Halo and Call of Duty, where it's like the Halo lore and the Halo style and all that Halo stuff, but then with the Call of Duty brain gameplay, I don't know. And you could call it ODST.
Yeah, like they could do it. They could do it.
I'd love that.
Like this is the, you know, and like you talk about what Helldivers does from a live service mechanic. Do you remember Chrome Hounds?
I remember the name. I never played it though.
Yeah, so when I played Helldivers 2, I was really reminded of Chrome Hounds. I loved Chrome Hounds. I don't like I can't remember what the phrase is. Whatever Armored Core 6 is with the really silly flying around super fast mechs. Whatever
the game that Jess is still getting hate for.
Yeah, 6.5. He did not have fun. All right, it's an opinion. They're objective. But yeah, like I love big hulking American style, you know, Mech Warrior 2 mech assault type mechs, right? And Chrome Hounds
slow ass mechs.
Yeah, slow ass mechs. And Chrome Hounds was a From Software game, if memory serves. But what was cool about it was you picked a faction of 3 factions, and there was an ongoing live war front, like in Helldivers. So in Helldivers, you get these orders to go to different places, and the war would play out in real time. So you could drop in to the front of a particular sector that you're fighting over against another faction, and you'd have a multiplayer match, and then depending upon how many people were in each faction and who won what would determine the outcome of the war, and then it got reset. It was such a unique and cool idea, and obviously people could combine different mechs together to make unique things. You got paint jobs and stuff, and I'm like, why is no one doing this now? Like, this could have been really good. Like when I previewed MechWarrior 5 last week, and I'm like, I love it because it's leaning into MechWarrior 2, and MechWarrior 2 was great. But I'm like, why is no one doing more Chrome Hound style stuff? Like, this is where you got to bring your players on a journey and not just throw out a season pass every month. You've got to actually make them care about what they're doing. I think the guys at Arrowhead have done an incredible job, and it is a shame that Xbox players aren't getting to enjoy it, because it's one of the best multiplayer games of the year.
Yeah. I mean, this the Helldivers is a great example of a game that should be on Xbox, you know, and for Sony's sake, they're not making any money selling consoles, right? And I ain't buying a console just for Helldivers, but I can play Helldivers on my PC anyway, you know. But I would double dip. I would buy it on Xbox as well if I could have all my save stuff transfer across, because then I get it everywhere, and that's kind of the way that things are going, you know. Give me that opportunity to double dip. I will do it, Sony. I will double dip on Helldivers.
You guys should pick up Helldivers. We'll get Nick in because he plays it on PlayStation, right? Me, you, Nick.
Dude, we should.
Nick plays something that's
I got him to jump in and play with me
or Fortnite.
Justin, yeah, he did play.
You know, it's funny. We had a comment about Nick, Big Willy Wonka. You know, with the 5 gifted memberships, but he also says,
so much.
I heard Nick claim he got a DM a year ago about John being here today.
It's true. He gets DMs all the
time. As far as like the Halo discussion we're having, and Governor Grimm says, who was going to do a Halo spinoff when Xbox funding was cut and they only had 5 studios.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's some truth to that. I mean, who's going to do it? Because obviously it wouldn't be anybody internal. But I mean, Arrowhead is not a PlayStation first party studio.
Yeah.
And
Arrowhead's a free agent.
yeah, and then I know Microsoft had a lot of bad experiences with second party developers in the Xbox One gen. A lot of one and dones, never to be seen again. It seemed like the only one that worked out was Ori and Moon Studios.
Did you see that
I
they
did
commented
see-
on that? Oh,
Yeah, I did see an article today about they have ideas and a title for Ori 3 or whatever.
Yeah.
But they also consider it to be a full arc, and it's done. It's a done story.
I mean, judging from how Ori 2 ended, yeah, I don't know if I want another Ori, but I mean, they left it open. But I mean, considering how good
Or prequel.
Ori was, it's Ori was the best Xbox exclusive of last generation by far. Nothing ever came close to it.
Yeah, Ori and the Will of the Wisps was unbelievably good.
Look, Scarecrow with another 5 gifted channel memberships.
You guys are awesome. Thank you so much.
You need to stream more, bro.
Yeah,
Hell,
I do.
Helldivers 2 stream, Jez.
We'll do it. We'll do Helldivers 2 stream.
John, interesting. I cannot. Nobody can give channel memberships on my channel. I cannot figure out how to enable it or where the option is.
It's a thing for them. I think it's a setting deep within YouTube. You have to be able to enable it, for yourself. Because I can't accept it. I'm like, well, how are people accepting all these memberships? And I can't because I haven't gone in and adjusted my profile to be able to accept them. It's a really weird thing. We get tons on Xbox here, but I could never accept any of them. Not that I'd be a member for my own channel.
Yeah, it's weird.
I know someone at YouTube. Maybe I'll try and get the channel sorted out.
Because when I go to other channels, there's always the option to gift memberships, but when people tell me there's not that option there for them on my channel, so
weird.
It just doesn't. I don't know. Maybe I need to do a further evaluation. But what do I want to talk about? I don't know if you saw this today. Which me and Jez will talk about on Friday, but I want to talk about it now because I feel a certain way about this. And you guys had mentioned Battlefield, and this is kind of Battlefield related.
Yeah, cool.
Did you see the thing about Motive?
Motive
being brought into the Battlefield franchise, right? And essentially, they're going to be making Battlefield games now. They even had to talk
I did
about
see that. Yeah, what did Motive even make so far? Do we even?
See, here's the thing. This is why I feel a certain way about this. Now, I love Battlefield. When people ask me, "Are you a COD guy or Battlefield guy?" I'm a Battlefield guy. For the multiplayer. For the single player, obviously it's Call of Duty. Battlefield stopped doing single players, and their single players were, outside of Bad Company, they weren't very good, right? They are just going through the motions. Bad Company was great, and I don't know why they have never brought that back. But I was always a Battlefield multiplayer dude. Motive remade Dead Space, and it was so incredible, right? That it got me thinking about Dead Space 2. Oh, you got to remake Dead Space 2 because Dead Space 2 is just as good, if not better, than Dead Space 1. But in the little press release or whatever, they're talking about the heads that made Dead Space remake for them. They're the ones transitioning to Battlefield. So I feel like the dream of a Dead Space 2 is dead if they're going on to make Battlefield stuff.
They're also developing Iron Man as well. So
so Iron Man's doing really well. I think they even mentioned they hit a new milestone, or maybe it was Insider Gaming that said it recently or something. But I'm so disappointed at this point. Not that I don't like Battlefield, but Dead Space was so fucking good that I'm imagining a remake, and I was so excited for it. But instead of that, I'm gonna get something Battlefield related. My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
Do you want a Battlefield single player game, man?
No, I really don't.
No, of course you don't. No one wants a Battlefield single player game, EA. Stop trying, all right? Stop doing it. Just make a good multiplayer Battlefield. Look at BattleBit. They made a good Battlefield game for probably like 5% of the budget that you spent on the last one. And it was really broken on launch and had to go through a year of patches to be good again, as is always the case for Battlefield. Maybe you're doing it wrong. Like, I don't understand EA's decision making here. You should be making Dead Space 2, motive. Like, this is a bad call. But hey, we're not in charge of this stuff.
They just shut down a studio that they built to make a Battlefield single player without. They never even made anything originally.
Yeah, Marcus Leto's team just got let go.
Yeah, and now it's like, oh, here's this motive team that did something really cool with Dead Space, and now it's like, and they're doing Iron Man, but it's like, they're just gonna get absorbed in the Battlefield, and it's just like, oh my god.
Battlefield's such a mess, man. Like Battlefield 1 was just perfect game. I think it's one of my favorite games of all time. Definitely one of my favorite shooters of all time. I know not everyone likes the World War I setting, but it was so unique. Like that's one of the reasons I really like it. It's just there's nothing else that has nailed that setting as well as that game. Like the huge blimps crashing down and the clunky vehicles. Like I loved it so much. So it was like so immersive as a shooter, and that's what Battlefield is to me. It's a multiplayer game that's somehow also really immersive. And I think like people who didn't like that era of combat, didn't want Battlefield 5 because they're like, even though it's World War II, it's like this is still that sort of that era, pre-modern era, or whatever. So like they kind of shot themselves in the foot there, and people were tired of it, and also. Battlefield 5 has all its problems and stuff, and they leaned into the hero aspects of it, and all that kind of stuff. And then they doubled down on the stuff people didn't like about Battlefield 5 for the new one, while also making it even worse. And now they're confused. They're confused as to why Battlefield's struggling, and.
Yeah, it's frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah, it is frustrating. And the thing that Battlefield doesn't need is a single player campaign. They need the old DICE team back. That's what they need.
It's like my favorite. Like a lot of love for Bad Company, right? I think Bad Company 2 probably was my favorite of the Bad Companies. But my personal favorite Battlefield game for me was Battlefield 1942. Do you remember the arcade?
Yeah,
one?
it was
just
came in late
nice and simple. It was just nice and simple.
It's nice and simple. Back in the days of just
people just having
fun. Like arcade games, Xbox Live Arcade, 200 gamers scored per title, blah 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 blah. Like, yeah, back in the good old days, huh? Back in the good old days. Let's talk about the future, shall we?
Shall we?
I feel we're talking about the future up in here. So, obviously, Xbox made waves. With regarding its multi-platform push, I guess you would say. Pentiment and Hi-Fi Rush are out right now on. Well, Pentiment's available on both, on Switch and PlayStation. Hi-Fi Rush is only available on PlayStation. Sea of Thieves and Grounded are releasing this month on. Grounded is on both, and Sea of Thieves is only on PlayStation. And there was a report out that basically said the success of Sea of Thieves on PlayStation is going to be the barometer of Microsoft's strategy moving forward, which I find kind of funny because it's just kind of admitting that Hi-Fi Rush and Pentiment probably didn't do anything and probably were expected not to do anything on PlayStation. And there are some statistics that said they didn't, right? I think True Trophies had it. Where like Pentiment didn't even reach in the top 200 games its first week, and Hi-Fi Rush didn't even.
That's on True Trophies, right? So you'd have to be.
Well, that was like judging off of extrapolating from like 4 million accounts or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But it's all based off of Sea of Thieves, which is whatever. So John, I mean, what do we think Xbox's future games lineup looks like? Because we got Hellblade 2. Right, we got Avowed this year. Indiana Jones.
So good. So many good games coming this year.
Other stuff unannounced. Maybe a Forza Horizon 6, potentially a Gears collection. Maybe Nick will finally be right on this one.
PS5 exclusive.
But the thing is, like, I guess the question then becomes like, how much of those actually stay exclusive, and how much of those
Well,
go to other platforms eventually down the road? Like, what's their strategy in your opinion?
well,
What does it look like?
this is a big thing, and I actually wrote a really long piece because I read
You did. Xbox
I
hasn't
read
left you behind, but they're moving forward.
well, I read a really good piece from Ains over at Season
Yes.
Gaming.
The same
so
day the
shout out to
VGC
Ains.
article came out, by the way. I think Ains's
Yeah, yeah.
article was out first, and then
Yep.
VGC wrote their opinion piece about how Phil's going to destroy Xbox. It was
Yep.
very interesting to see the two contrasts on the same day.
And yeah, I read that, and I read yours, Jez. And I was like, I was trying to piece stuff together, and it's funny enough, I was bouncing ideas off of our team, and I reached out to a good friend, OBM, in the
He's
chat.
in the chat. OBM's in the
Shout him
chat.
out.
Yeah.
And he was like, this is a good structure, and he gave me some tips as well. And I sat and I wrote for a Saturday afternoon, and I was like, I get to do this full time now, and I'll do a talk at the camera video, right? And there's a couple of things, like you're talking about exclusivity, and this is what I'm trying to get across in the piece. And what the hell, I'll put it in the chat because I can. I'm a moderator here, it's fine. But the nutshell is, Microsoft are in this weird position, right, where we've heard all the fluff about they've lost the console war and yada yada yada, and I empathize. I wrote a piece originally like a couple of months back. Like, I completely empathize with people that are like, this isn't how it was supposed to go. Like, we've been cheering you from the sidelines to make these acquisitions, and yeah, you've got ABK, and now we're going to win, right? And that's not how I think. I'm just paraphrasing certain evangelists, right? But I understand that now this feels like a complete slap in the face. I get it. And I'm not throwing them under their bus or their feelings. I totally understand why they are feeling that way. And it's Microsoft's battle to try and explain the why, right? And the why is that we're all old, right? And we're buying less and less. We talk about PlayStation bangers and Xbox bangers and all of this sort of stuff. But for a console that's, sold 90 million PS4s or whatever it was, 110, I don't even know the number, but their biggest selling games only sell like 10 or 15. Like, is that worth it to spend 300 million on Spider-Man 2 and only sell 10? Is it anymore? And Microsoft, they're a $3 trillion company, and unfortunately, because they bought ABK, because they bought Bethesda, they're now under the big scrutiny. They're a pillar. They make more money than Windows. They've got to change how they do things, and this is resulting in all of these experiments. But Sea of Thieves makes sense because it's a live service game. Hi-Fi Rush, this was an under-marketed, shadow-dropped game that's incredible and everyone should play it. But if you want to grow the value of the IP, do you just, that's it, it's done, it had its chance, and you can't justify a sequel, or do you try and give it a shot? You called out Pentiment, it didn't do well. Part of me thinks that that's talent retention, right? Like, do you want to keep the legendary Josh Sawyer and his team happy by letting this passion project go? Because if I was a super cool developer working for Xbox, the smallest platform, and you think like, oh, my games are never going to get bought, the least people are going to play them, do you want to work there? As a creator, do you want to work where your games get played the least, figuratively speaking, or do you want to try and get played by as many people as possible? So there's so many different things I think are mixing in to make people, make Microsoft make these decisions. But fundamentally, they're changing how they're going to do the industry. And I think part in that comes for their new hardware plans as
You think they're doing it a little bit too early, right? Because there's this talk of like, hey, this might be the future. Maybe 5-10 years from now. Who knows what the future holds, right?
Yeah.
Regulators could crack open the walled gardens of these consoles. Who knows? Maybe the rising cost of devs make everybody rethink exclusivity to a certain degree. And we always know that Microsoft always seems to be early to technology that may not be accepted at first. Like, everybody didn't want Kinect because who wants a video
phone in their living room?
Yeah, who wants a camera in your living room and an audio pickup? But then everybody, wants Alexa and all these other sort of devices, and put them on your front doorbell. And Microsoft with the original Xbox One DRM strategy, now people are lamenting that didn't come to fruition. The family plan, and digital licenses and all that sort of stuff. People weren't ready for it. So how much of this is Microsoft reading the tea leaves essentially and being like, okay, we think the industry is moving in this direction, so we're going to move there first. But then maybe just doing this way too early before their customer base or the rest of the industry is really ready to do it. Because sometimes I wonder if that's the case here. Like, they can see where the future is going to go, but they're just too early to initiate it. And, maybe there's we've seen the backlash.
Yeah.
We haven't really seen if it's translated into,
I mean, we're
actual
in a bubble.
numbers or whatever, like that sort of stuff. But there's a part of me that thinks maybe it's too early and this could blow up in their face potentially. Maybe not. Maybe it helps them become, because Phil says this, every move they make is to make Xbox bigger in the future. But I don't know. What do you think about it? You think maybe it's too early, or is it just the right time?
It's up in the air, right? Like, as a fan of the platform, I understand everyone's concerns about, okay, you do this, now there's less reason to buy the console, because why would I buy the box that only has Xbox games on it when I could buy the games that the box that has PlayStation games and Xbox games on it? Why wouldn't I just do that? That was like the genuine question people are asking, and it's a perfectly salient one. So I think the answer from Microsoft, if they are going to, carry on, this isn't, the experiment doesn't stop at 4, and I'll be honest, it's not going to stop at 4.
No, I don't think anybody believes it's only
no one
gonna be
thinks
4.
it's going to be 4.
Yeah, right. So okay, it's going to be more than 4. So how do we answer that question, right? And you were talking earlier around about Phil or the team coming out and talking about the future. They've started to lay some groundwork, right, in terms of talking about future hardware and talking about technological leaps, right? And I'm always wary of buzzwords because, I remember the teraflop wars, as we all do, right? Now they don't mean shit. I remember resolution wars. Now that doesn't matter anymore, apparently.
Well, John, it doesn't mean teraflops don't mean shit now because Xbox isn't doing a mid-gen console. Because if they were, the teraflop battle would be back on. I guarantee you it. I guarantee you it.
Yeah, you're probably right. But yeah, it's a really hard one because what can Microsoft do? Clearly, we're still living in a world where journalists that cover the media that can control a lot of the messaging that the everyday layman reads still use phrases like Xbox doesn't have any games and they're not delivering and I'm like, have they been playing on this platform? I've been playing so many games I can't finish them all. What are you talking about? But it doesn't communicate through because they're not playing on this platform, and 80% of games media pick a PlayStation game for every third party game they're ever going to review forever, right? So they're not here for this platform. Microsoft knows this; they know the numbers, right? So they know that they're no matter what they do, they're not going to get a fair shake. So is this an element of, well, if we just take ourselves out of this race, we'll just do something completely different? And there's a part of me that is okay, let's see where this goes. Because what's the real issue that's going to happen to me, right? They've promised me I'm still going to get hardware. I'm just talking generally for all the gamers out there that want to think, okay, I'm still going to get hardware. I'm still going to have access to my library. I'm going to still have the best-in-class kind of console services that I've got. I'm still going to have my Cool Game Pass subscription. I'm still going to get all these games day one, right? So what harm is it outside of you are doing something that goes against 30 years of how consoles have always worked? Where is the actual harm being delivered? Do you know what I mean?
Some would say the actual harm would be that less people would buy your hardware. And because there would be less people playing on Xbox consoles, the developers have less of a reason to make Xbox versions of their games, and we've already seen some developers and some publishers. Yeah, third-party support essentially dries up. I mean, Christopher Dring, say what you will about the guy, said he talked to developers and publishers at GDC that are like, we don't even know why we're supporting Xbox now. We don't know who those publishers or devs are, But, you know, I think it's quite concerning that even talk like that is circulating, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Especially, you know, Xbox requires you to be like, you got to make an Xbox Series X version and a Series S version. And no developer wants extra work, right? They're like, oh, the Series S, we don't want to have to do this extra work. Now, the rumors have it that they're going to be doing another console, okay, but then they're also going to do a handheld. And it's like, well, if the handheld is not a series, so okay, if it's going to be a Series S profile, great, but it's like if the console's better than the Series X, that's a new one you got to make it for. Then it's still going to be cross-gen, so you're going to have to make one for the Series X. That's 2. Yeah. And then the Series S, so that's 3. And if the handheld's not a Series S profile, like say it's better or it's worse, well, that's 4.
Yeah.
I would imagine developers aren't too keen on developing 4 versions of an Xbox game to support cross-gen. You know, and then you already hear and be like, we don't want, like, there's a part of me, you know, when you look at it, you're like,
Yeah, I think it's a perfectly valid concern.
turn out to be maybe potentially bad down the road. So I guess we'll talk about like their future hardware, right? You mentioned Sarah Bond and the thing with like, hey, we're doing hardware. They even said that they're going to be doing hardware reveals this year, essentially.
I think they said fall,
like which is
end of
odd.
the year.
It's like what sort of you're not talking about a Series X white discless thing because
well, she used the word exciting.
I know, like, and that's not exciting.
Not an exciting
but the thing is, me and Jez always have this discussion about stuff, and what they consider exciting is different than what we consider exciting.
Yeah,
right.
Possible.
So there's the rumors about the handheld, which Phil talked extensively at length with Polygon. And it really does seem like Microsoft is about to make a handheld. Jez put out there in an Xbox 2. We were just talking about it casually. Tom Warren wrote an article about it that Jez knows that they're prototyping an Xbox handheld. Currently, a native Xbox handheld. Always got to point that out. Native. It's not a cloud streaming thing. So, is an Xbox handheld something that Xbox needs to pursue? And if it is an Xbox handheld going to be the thing that brings in lots of new users for Xbox? Because in that conversation piece with Polygon, he talked about they're always on the lookout for new users. Is the handheld going to be that beacon to be like, hey, come on, guys, we're doing a handheld. You guys love the Switch, right? Come on, we got a handheld too.
A really powerful one.
Yeah.
Oh, it's an interesting one, right? Like when you think of handheld and Xbox, do you think of a budget handheld like a Switch, right? Or do you think?
I think of the ROG Ally. Well, I haven't really played any, but I think of a Jazz. What do you think of? Do you think of a Switch? You think of a ROG Ally?
I think it won't be a budget kind of thing. Well, you got to think of it in three different terms, right? Because you've got your super budget, which is a Nintendo Switch or Nintendo Switch Lite, even, which is like what's a Switch Lite? $200 or something? It's absurdly cheap for what you get. It is a really, really great device. No cap whatsoever. But then you've got like the next level up, which is your Steam Deck, which again very cheap, like starts at $400 for what it is. Again, amazing. But it's compromised. You know, there's like a lot of games do run really well on it if they're hyper optimized for it. Like Cyberpunk runs pretty well on it, but stuff like I couldn't get Returnal to run very well on it at all, for example. But then you've got the ROG Ally. Now the ROG Ally is like, it will pretty much run anything if you're willing to go to 720p 30 frames for some games, and then you get like a really great experience in optimized games, like anywhere up to 60 FPS or even more in some cases. So like Diablo runs flawlessly on it, 1080p and all that kind of stuff. But the compromise there is your battery life. So because more power means more battery consumption, and with today's tech, your AMD and Nvidia and stuff like that, you've got that bottleneck, which is like how much watts and how much power it burns through with today's battery technology. Now, when we talk about Xbox, one of the things that Xbox often does is innovate. And one of the things that we're seeing this year is the end of Qualcomm's exclusivity over the ARM chip processor process. So Qualcomm right now is sort of having its last hurrah with the ARM exclusivity, and they're releasing the Snapdragon Elite X, which is designed for high-end PCs that's coming this summer. And I don't know where I saw this, but I swear to God, I saw a report that the Snapdragon X Elite can run Baldur's Gate at 60 frames a second via Microsoft's new emulation system. And because obviously if it's ARM based instead of x86 based, there has to be some kind of emulation which gives you overheads, right? On your processing, you know, which in the past, and this isn't the first time Microsoft's done ARM based PCs with the Surface Pro X, in the past the emulation layer was not that great, and stuff like Photoshop would lag, even intensive websites would lag on that processor. But now, like, that was back then, like 3-4 years ago, the Surface Pro X came out 3 years ago, I think. 2 years, I don't know.
Yeah,
off the top of my head. It's quite old. I've got one. I really like it. It's great little netbook. But the benefits of ARM is battery life. It uses really low power. It's also cheaper than the x86 processor processes. So like this could be the innovation where it's like, okay, this is going to be an ARM-based handheld, like an iPad, like an iPad or a smartphone, which, you know, gets all day battery life in theory. And then you get like the emulation for Xbox games, and you also get the emulation for Windows games. And then like you get this handheld that really does blow everything out in the water, because, man, it's kind of silly when you've got an Asus ROG Ally and you unplug it and you put everything on max, you get like 30 minutes of battery life. It's silly.
It's
right?
kind of like, come on.
Yeah, you have to plug it in, you know, and it's fine. Like most planes and trains are going these days have power outlets, so it's not a big deal. It's not a huge deal to me. But the dream is not having to plug it in, not having to like carry around a ton of stuff with me, not having to carry around a power bank, not having to carry around a 65 watt charger to do all that stuff. So I think like when Microsoft does a handheld, it probably will. Maybe, I don't think it will be quite as powerful as what Asus and Lenovo are putting out, because apparently Asus ROG Ally 2 is already on the horizon. Lenovo Legion Go 2 is also on the horizon. I don't think it'll be quite as powerful as that, but I also don't think it'll offer full-blown Windows. I think it'll be somewhere in the middle where it's like, okay, we're an ARM-based system, which does have some compromises maybe in performance, but what you get is actual serious battery life and some unique features on top of it. So I think
sounds
they'll
like
innovate.
a technological leap to me, Jez.
Yeah, it does sound like a technological leap. Yeah, it sounds like a technological leap, yeah. But I also think, like, if they do a handheld, I do think they're also going to do a traditional, probably x86 console for the hardcore. I don't think they'll completely throw everything at the handheld, an ARM-based handheld. I don't think they'll be like, okay, this is our only console. We've become Nintendo now, and we're a handheld company. I don't think they'll do that. I think they'll be like, okay, we've got a handheld here. It's based on ARM. It's you know, it's maybe $400, $500, something like that, and it's more powerful than the Steam Deck, but maybe not as powerful as the Asus ROG 2 or the Lenovo Legion Go 2. Maybe not even the Asus ROG 1. Maybe not even that powerful. But you do get the battery life. But then in addition, here's your core Xbox console, which is all singing and dancing, all super powerful. You plug it in, you know, go sits on your TV, as you know, for people who want that experience. That's what I kind of think of the way Xbox going. It's going to be the everything platform, something for everyone, but also super innovative. I'm really excited about it.
And that's I kind of think that the takeaway that people are, with all the concern, need to try and like bigger picture it a little bit is like, if I can just have the equivalent of all of my digital library playing at Xbox Series S levels, like, and I don't mind the odd 30 FPS game, but if I can unplug that and walk around with it and take it out and go out and it will last all day, and I can play like 12 rounds of Balatro in bed. You know, like, great. I am a really happy man. The magic for me would be if they make the current memory cards like slot in completely and disappear, like click.
Oh, that'd be so sick.
If they bring all of that compatibility to bear, and they offer outside of that, because like I think I saw a metric, something like 80% of all games played in Japan were on a mobile device. 80%. Like they're open, you know, like Phil talking about going for new users. Well, that's one way. You talk about delivering a big machine for the hardcore, right? And imagine a world like people saying, "Oh, you know, why would I buy an Xbox if I can get all of PlayStation's games and Xbox's games on my PlayStation?" Well, why wouldn't you buy an Xbox if you could get everything that is available on your Xbox and your library right now? Anything that PlayStation will release as a day one game on PC, because they are going to have to do that, ladies and gentlemen. It is a thing that's going to have to happen because they're not making enough money. Their margins are shit. And you get Steam or Epic or itch.io, you know, like that is a really massive shift to how games are consumed. And yes, Microsoft risk losing the control of, you know, everything we sell on our device, on our marketplace. We get the cut regardless of third party or whatever. But by giving the consumer the choice of where to buy, it's you know, it's taking a more almost user perspective on it, and it's a gamble. But if that's what they're going to go for, and then you've got the possibility, and I don't know whether this is going to happen, this is pure conjecture on my part, but if they said to OEM partners like ROG, like, here's the minimum spec for this ARM chip handheld, this is the minimum you can do, but if you want to make one that's £400 more expensive or whatever, you can go nuts. You have a license to go and do that, but you have to use this and this. These are the minimums because that's what our devs need, right? And you can do the same for the big console, and then you've got people deciding between PC or this kind of like unique OEM design. Like they would open up the whole market, man. Like that's innovative and new and crazy and scary. But I really like that. Excites me as well, because it's not just the same old fucking HD twins battling it out. We have to deal with all the console war bollocks. We can just ignore it all and just play loads of really good games. Like sign me up.
I think
I'm a little bit more optimistic.
I'm well optimistic for it, and I suppose because I am a PC gamer, I play a lot of games on PC. The idea of a platform that, and you know, when Phil's talking about like, you know, what if we could have the Epic Games Store on Xbox? Like, you can take that as a hint. That's what they're doing. You can take that as a. Phil literally said in my interview when he talks about this kind of stuff, he's hinting at where they're going with some of this kind of platform stuff. So like, I think in that universe, as someone who is a PC gamer, it really excites me, because the one thing that's always sucked is PC gaming on TV. Like, I've got a friend who's got like, PC gaming on TV sucks. Like, using Windows on the TV, it sucks. You know, using them, you know, having to get a lap board and, you know, and these lappable keyboards, it just really sucks. It's a terrible experience. But what if like there was a PC gaming platform, a Windows platform that was actually great on TV? And I kind of feel like that's what they're building, and that's like they're bringing Xbox fans along for that ride, because in a way, Xbox is already a Windows platform. Xbox is powered by Windows 8, you know, so it's only a logical sort of conclusion that if they are, and by the way, I will say that the Windows 11 kernels started to show up on the Xbox insider builds very recently for the first time, and there are some Windows 11 APIs, but they're bolted onto Windows 8. But like, if you are sort of bringing Xbox to the Windows 11 generation or the Windows 12 generation even, because Windows 12's on the way too, then you kind of like, what's the next step of GameCore? Bringing Windows and Xbox development closer together, because the reason some developers do skip Xbox is because it's not trivial to port a PC game to Xbox, or it's not trivial to port a PC game to PlayStation. It's a headache. But what if those platforms were even closer together? What if it was like, for the end user, it was exactly the same as Xbox is today, and you have your dashboard, it works with the controller, all that kind of stuff. But for a developer, the developer environment's even closer to PC, and I think that's what excites me personally. But I get that some people might be skeptical about that. See, Rand sounds a bit skeptical.
So look, I'll present the devil's advocate, right? Or the other side of this, right? Like, Phil in these interviews talked about getting new users, right? For one, like, we're always got to be going on for the new users, which is why, you know, John, your article was like, they're not left you behind, right? Because a lot of people feel like, oh, if you're just focused on new users, maybe you're leaving us hardcore fans, you know, which is funny because Jez got a DM saying that like they're leaving us behind, but whatever. But how does putting Steam or Epic or GOG on your console, how does that bring in new users? Are they like, and even if like, let's say it brings you PC users, right? Because PC users are, like you said, PC on the TV is bad, right? Okay, so imagine this device. Oh man, like PC gaming on the TV is going to be fantastic. So PC users buy it, right? But they certainly won't be buying games from the Xbox store on this device. They're just going to keep on buying games from the stores that they're already accustomed to, which is most likely Steam.
Yep.
So while it may be bringing in new users there, it's certainly not going to be actually bringing in new paying users, right? So I sort of wonder what is the reason for this device outside of going to people and being like, look how consumer friendly we are.
Well,
We're allowing other company stores on our walled within our walled garden approach. Maybe they can even go to regulators and be like, look what we're doing compared to the others. Because in my eye, like if you had the Xbox store and also on this device, you also had the Steam store and they're competing with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Developers, in my opinion, would be like, okay, so we know everybody who has this device or these two devices have access to both stores. Where the Steam one is the easier one to develop for. You know, we don't need to make an Xbox version of a game anymore. Because we know the Xbox people who have the device can just get it on Steam if they want. Especially if it's like really easy and simple to access Steam. Now, of course, this is assuming it's easy and simple to access this stuff and you don't have to go through some hoops like you do to install things on the other stuff. Obviously, that would be a different conversation. Like, I'm thinking these stores are like super easy to get into and you could get it. So then I think the developers would just be like, nah, like, why even bother? Why spend the extra money on making an Xbox port of a game that we're not sure how it's going to sell? Because those Xbox users have the Steam store available to them right there on their device. So, all right, you go buy it there instead. So it's like, what new users are you bringing in with this? Will that affect third-party development of games? Because wouldn't people just buy it from the Steam store? I guess you would say, well, Game Pass is going to be the differentiating factor here. Plus, games are cheaper on Steam. Like, you could get Dragon's Dogma for $50 on Steam when it came out instead of $70. Like, some Xbox fans might look at this and be like, you know what? I'm going PC. And I know, like, Xbox always and Phil's been like, we lost a generation we couldn't lose. But they also feel like people aren't going to give up their digital library. But I know plenty of people within my circle that have given up their digital library on Xbox because they believe PC is a superior experience. So they're playing there instead, right? They may maybe not be buying another console to build up their libraries, but they're certainly moving to PC to build up their libraries because that's going to be the new place they play.
Well, that's exactly, you've proven your point, really. You've proven the point, and it's like, well, they've already left, so
they've already left.
We're in the minority. How do you get them back?
More people, yeah, but I don't know. But
you get them back by selling them a device that can attach their TV.
Yeah, but let's just imagine someone who's left Xbox to play on PC. Here's the Xbox console that's $500 or $600, and it plays PC gaming great. So that person buys it. Is Microsoft selling that console for a profit? So that person who buys that console and then never subscribes to Game Pass and never buys anything on an Xbox store? Well, is that a customer Microsoft wants? These are just things I'm thinking. I don't know.
No. I think it's
valid.
All valid conversation, and I think these are all questions that Microsoft will have to answer for developers if all of this pans out, right? But I think broadly there is their mobile push, right? There is Game Pass, obviously. There is also the fact that out of every publisher across the world, Microsoft is now the largest, right? So it's a kind of like a no-brainer for any hardcore gamer, for the most part, to just be like, yeah, I should be subscribed to this because I get all of this on my handheld, on this device, on that device. I can go anywhere with it. You know, that's that the value for money is in the services that they provide attached
But
to
John,
their
I know
account.
you say, oh, you buy it here, you can play it here, but wouldn't that also apply to Steam? If I buy a game on Steam, not only can I play it on my PC, now I can play it on this Xbox device I own and the Xbox handheld I own, plus the Steam device I may already have. Right?
Yeah.
It almost sort of makes Steam even in better value, because now you can play that game that you purchased on Steam in more places. Then maybe, I know Jez was going to say, well, cloud, because Steam's not going to do cloud and Xbox is going to do cloud. And maybe that is a factor 5-10 years from now, but it certainly, I don't think anybody's like, well, I'm going to purchase, like I'm going to make sure I got the cloud license here when I buy a game or whatever.
Well, listen, there's another aspect to this, right? Another aspect to this is maybe developers are on board with it. Maybe Microsoft's gone to EA and Bethesda and all these companies and been like, especially the Western developers. I mean, the Japanese developers are another, debate altogether, and maybe that's where the handheld comes in, and it's like, support us because we're doing this handheld. But maybe they've already gone to the Western the publishers and told them the strategy, and they're on board with it, and they've already pledged to continue supporting the platform. Like you've got EA Access in Game Pass, so they're already predisposed to to continue to support the Xbox native experience. But maybe like Microsoft's, like, I would have hoped that Microsoft thought about all these possible eventualities and just been like, this is about opening up. Maybe they've even gone to Valve HQ and they've already spoke to Valve about how all this works from a mutually beneficial partnership angle, I want to believe that they'll be smart enough to have thought of all that. And, just to devil's advocate, your devil's advocate.
Yeah, sure. Obviously. And this only really applies, what I'm saying only really applies to the stores actually being super readily accessible, right? You don't have to jump through hoops to get it. Because if you have to jump through hoops, then obviously that's a different whole thing in regard. And like, I know, because I had to step away for a minute because somebody was at the door, but you guys were talking about ARM. So in even another situation of this, it's like, is Xbox going to switch up the programming language for developers and being like, hey, not only you got to support these devices, but also we're on ARM now?
I think they were bragging that their ARM like conversion to
their emulation layer. So
that's it. Yeah, thank you, Jez. You tell him.
Yeah, I'll tell him. So the big thing with ARM, the issue with ARM, and this has been true for Apple and Microsoft, is emulation. So Apple moved to ARM and for their laptops, right? And the issue they had was like bringing their Mac ecosystem to ARM, and they have this platform called Rosetta, Rosetta Stone translation, whatever. And Apple's emulation was incredible. It was amazing, and it was so good that it blew Windows laptops out of the water, because it was like, okay, now these are on the really low power ARM architecture, but also it gives you the full Mac experience, while also without compromising on power too much. I mean, obviously they're not going to be a dedicated GPU like a NVIDIA thing, but Apple's never really been about that necessarily. But The Verge published that report, was it yesterday, I think, where like they're saying that Microsoft insiders are talking about how great the new Windows emulation layer is, and also there's been a report that Baldur's Gate 3 runs at 60 frames per second on it, and all this kind of stuff. So assuming that the emulation layer is really good, it won't be a case of developers having to develop again for ARM. It'll be a case of develop for Steam, develop for PC, and then just literally click a button and now it's an Xbox game. I think that's what they're hoping for with this platform, I think.
And there's always gonna, in my opinion anyway, there's always gonna be a subset of gamers that don't want a PC. They will want just the console experience. That's all they want, that's all they care about. But there are plenty of hardcore gamers like me, like people listening right now, that would be like, wait. So I can have a device that I can treat like a native console experience, but also there's a handheld version, and I can have access to my Steam library and this, and I can go get those early access games that go viral. Sure. Not just locked to PC.
Get Monster Hunter Stories.
And I think, like the console market is flat. Like we were talking about, what we were talking about with Jesse, he made a really salient point. Like, if you think about Nintendo, they had the Wii and the, what's it called? 2DS, 3DS, whatever the handheld was. I can't remember. Help me out. And they both had like
can't remember.
X number of million sales. Like the Wii sold really well, and the handheld that they had at the time sold really well. And then the 3DS came out, and that sold pretty good. But the Wii U flopped, right? And then rather than have these two disparate markets, they combined with their hybrid Switch. But then you didn't see like the Switch sell, only 80 million. It combined those markets, so that's why it's got as high as it's got. But the market hasn't grown for them. It's the same. They just lost the two different avenues, and they combined their development teams into one device as opposed to running two different ones. And that flat market, I think, is what Microsoft are looking at, is like the people that are going to buy a console are the same people that bought a console 10 years ago, and the new people don't care. But if we can introduce a device that a subset of our games will work across mobile, and if they got this handheld, then they'd have access to all of these more. And like, there's a lot of gambling going on from Microsoft's point of view.
Sure,
here.
and I know they like maybe they can gamble because they have Activision Blizzard and they got Bethesda and they got all this stuff and they run a profitable business, as Phil says. I just when I look at this stuff, and I'm not saying they shouldn't do a handheld. I think they should, but I also think it's going to appeal to I know like Special Nick on your podcast said it should just be an Xbox. Yeah. And I believe Tom Warren disagreed that it should, if it's just an Xbox, there's no reason to do it. And Nick was being like, what? Like, a lot of people want an Xbox handheld. And like me, I don't particularly care, but definitely I can see a market for an Xbox handheld of existing Xbox users who would love to be able to take their games on the go. But when you combine that with Phil's statements about we need new users, we need all this sort of stuff, I sort of wonder, well, like, is there a market out there? Are there plenty, like millions of people out there who want to get into Xbox, but just the form factor wasn't there, like don't want consoles, but now that they're doing a handheld, is there a person out there that is like, oh, well, I want to get an Xbox now because now it's a handheld and that's something I enjoy, because when we think about these things, you always got to think of the things that Xbox is thinking about, which clearly they've signaled from the top. It's about new users. It's about more revenue streams and all that stuff. And I'm not sure like an Xbox handheld appeals to a subset of new users. It definitely will appeal to people who are already neck deep in the ecosystem, who spend a ton of money, which is something, hey, go ahead, make that device for those people. I'm just not sure suddenly you're going to have being like, someone who's never been interested in Xbox is like, yeah, you know what? Now that they're doing this handheld device, I want it. Now, I guess you could say, well, what about the kids who grew up with the Switch and maybe they want to graduate into, because that's how Sony always positioned Nintendo in this grand scheme of things. Like, Nintendo brought these young kids into gaming, and then when those kids were old enough, they graduated to PlayStation. That's why, like, and those are things PlayStation has said. So maybe there is some of that. I was like, oh, these kids are about to get older. Wouldn't you don't screw what Don Otaku says about Nintendo games. You want a real device, come over here to play Xbox. But then Xbox also talking about, hey, these young kids, these Gen Zers, from our research, they don't actually care about any of this stuff. They don't care about consoles. They don't care about any of this.
This is the thing, right? We're kind of having the wrong argument. We're constantly thinking about they need to sell consoles, and stuff. But that's really not the business. You got to remember, the business is selling games, and then we'd say, well, they're giving Steam a cut. The thing is, right, it's not that much more expensive to give Steam a cut than it is to run your own storefront. Costs have gone up so much that the margins of putting your game on Steam and running your own platform are basically closing. So it's it's becoming like, I mean, the argument becomes there's actually no point in us running our own store because it's almost as the same price as just putting the game on Steam. That's what someone told me recently, is that like the margins are getting so slim because you have to pay for your support staff, you have to pay for, all that other stuff. But the thing about Microsoft is they're actually passionate about hardware, and they will use the COD money to subsidize making hardware, and they will use the COD money, and they will, use the money from selling games on Steam to subsidize hardware and to subsidize this platform. And I'll tell you why, right? And this is another thing someone from Microsoft told me. they learned their lesson from Windows Phone. They learned their lesson because they kicked themselves out of that ecosystem, and now the regulatory environment is changing. And if they still had a mobile phone platform, they might have a foot in the door to make some kind of comeback now. If they hadn't completely gotten rid of it, they might still be in third place. They might be behind Apple and Android. They might only have like 10% market share in their respective verticals, but they'd still have a foot in the door. But now they don't even have a foot in the door, and they're talking about like they don't know what the future is going to look like in 10, 20 years. And their mentality is, we don't want to completely get rid of having our own platform, because maybe in the future things will swing in the other direction, where having a platform is a really great idea. It's a really great idea to have the same platform, So I don't think hardware is going away. I think even if it does hurt their market share in terms of the Xbox platform or, whatever, I think they'll still do it. And I think there'll still be millions of people and billions of dollars going through this platform and this system. I think there's going to be a lot of people worried, because change is scary. And I was worried. Change is scary, but I also think this is the best bet. And I believe that Microsoft's in it for the long haul, and they're going to bring us along for the ride. But I want to wrap it up now, because it's 1:30. Well, it's almost going on 1 o'clock, and it's almost midnight for John, and it's almost 1 o'clock in the morning here. So
already,
I didn't even realize the time. Yeah. I was just going to make one more point on that.
Go on then. Close us off.
Well, I've got a 10-year-old, right, and he doesn't talk about he talks about Xbox because obviously he knows what I do, but he gets frustrated when he reaches out and his friends don't have the same machine and the game has no crossplay and they can't play together. But they're not playing all the same stuff that we're playing. I know this is anecdotal, right? But I love the idea of a world where it doesn't matter anymore, and the games are what is the centrifying force of everything. It's not the platform anymore; it's the game that you're playing. And yes, it's a gamble. Yes, it's a risk. But it's now up to Microsoft to message it, convince it, and somehow make it work. And they've got the June Summer Showcase coming up to maybe start to lay some of that groundwork for that message out. And all we can do at this point is sit back and go, okay, let's see what happens. I just anyone that's super console warrior in their fields, just try and relax a bit. Just enjoy the games that are coming out over the next couple of months, and we'll worry about things when we have something a little bit more concrete to worry about.
Hey, did you know that this June Showcases is the first one PlayStation and Nintendo fans might want to watch? Multi-platform games. Never been multi-platform games ever at an Xbox show in June.
It's not like they've reported they've had record viewership, every year, basically. Oh man, this is exactly what we're talking about earlier, where people clearly don't play on Xbox. They're clearly not interested in Xbox, and that's why podcasts like this exist for you guys, the Epic Xbox 2 and Xbox era communities, respectively. John, tell the people where they can find you on the internet.
You guys can find me, as you should all well know by now, xboxera.com. My personal Twitter handle is, frustratingly, @_SIKAMIKANICO_. Good luck spelling that based off of just the word. But guys, thank you ever so much for having me on. It's been an honor and a privilege.
It's been fun.
Yeah,
it's could have gone for another hour.
I could have. Yeah, the Xbox 2 community is awesome. I've been reading the chat all night, and people are so... this is what the beauty of it is, right? This is why we do what we do, is we get to have direct conversations with good people, having sensible, level-headed conversations, and I love it. So thank you.
Those Twitter hot takes, like Nick made one earlier today.
Yes, indeed.
Crackdown 3 is a good game, or something.
Yeah, and Crackdown 3 is not a 60, and I said, actually, it's about where it should be. And then Jesse was like, boo, and I'm like, I'm right.
Well, if you can't spell John's name, the link's in the description to Xbox Era Podcast. Thanks to everyone on Patreon who came to check this out. And also thanks to everyone on Spotify and YouTube who are listening to this a week later. If you want to get this on time and early, join us on patreon.com/XB2. That's XB and number 2. And also check out manscaped.com as usual. 20% off, free shipping with checkout code XB2. 2. That's XB and the number 2. But yeah, thanks everybody. And we'll get out of here. Say goodbye, guys.
Yeah. Later. See you on Friday.
Ciao for now.
Bye.